Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Charity Charge Show. On this show, we highlight the great work of nonprofits that we come across and learn about the wonderful people that are powering the mission from behind the scenes. And today I'm joined by Camille Kessler with AMIS. And Camille, thank you so much for being with us today. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much. I'm happy to be with you.
Awesome. Glad to have you. Very excited to dive into the work of Ami. But before that, just curious to learn a little bit more about you and your background. So, if you could take me back and maybe talk a little bit about what got you into the nonprofit sector, what about your background set you on this path that you're on today?
Sure. I've got a rather varied background, in fact. Graduated from University of Georgia million years ago, and worked in the corporate world. So worked for some Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, and along the way, just felt like I needed to do something where I was helping others, not just helping corporations. And so that's when I decided to turn to nonprofits. And so I've led a number of organizations either as a volunteer or as a paid director. So I was president of the Junior League of Atlanta, the Atlanta Symphony Associates, served on numerous boards of directors. I'm a past president of the National Charity League chapter that my daughters and I belong to. And I led a nonprofit called Rebuilding Together. It's a part of a national affiliate of nonprofits scattered all over the United States. And they would renovate the homes for low income military veterans, senior citizens, disabled persons, and multi generational families. And so I led that nonprofit for a number of years while raising three daughters and also running and owning a bakery. So it got to be um, a little harried. And so I decided, okay, I need to refocus. And so during COVID, I left the nonprofit and focused on my small business to get us through COVID. And once we got through that, I sold my store and I thought, well, what do I want to be when I grow up? I miss nonprofits. I still want to be involved and give back, and so I turned to AMI. I am a personal volunteer with AMI. I have volunteered with the Atlanta Ministry with international students for 18 years, and so I decided to join their board of directors late 2024. And within a few months, I was hired as their executive director. So, woohoo, I'm here. It was not planned, not intended, but I love the organization. And when I learned that the executive director was going to be rolling off, I was happy to step in and see what I can do and what areas of my background could be used to help this organization not just survive, but also succeed and thrive.
Wonderful. And that is quite a varied background. And no, you weren't joking. The common thread that I'm seeing, based on experience either in the for-profit world or a bakery, that you clearly have a passion for service of others, and so that does make a lot of sense, and is really fantastic. I mean, to have someone like you in a leadership position driving the mission of an organization is very important and makes sense. Tell me a little bit more about AMI Atlanta.
Me means friend in French, and I did
Mm,
take French in high school and college, and I know about 5 words. So and that's one of the words that I know. But it's an acronym. And so AMI stands for the Atlanta Ministry with International Students. And so we're not a faith based organization, but it was started as one. So 47 years ago, AMI was founded by a gentleman named Fahed Abu Akhel, Dr. Abu Akhel. He came to the United States in 1978 as a student, an international student from Palestine. And he met an American family here in Atlanta and they embraced him, welcomed him. He became part of their family and he thought, wouldn't it be amazing if other students who leave their family and friends behind and come to Atlanta, to the United States, could have a similar welcoming experience? And so he set about forming AMI and he got a group of various denomination churches in Atlanta to come together to raise funds and raise awareness. And it started out as a Christian organization and then later morphed into a traditional C3. So we are non proselytizing, we welcome international students and volunteers of all faiths from every country. And our goal is to provide kindness, friendship, and hospitality to international students that are studying at Atlanta universities and colleges. And we partner them with local volunteers who see the benefit and value in welcoming those who may be different from themselves. It is just such a powerful mission. My family and I, in 18 years, we've met people from all over the world through just volunteering before, I became an employee, just volunteering. And we would have students from, I remember we had a student from Turkey and he was wearing his traditional garb and it almost looked like a Scottish kilt, but it wasn't. And I remember we had him over for Thanksgiving and he said, "Well, why do you have turkey at Thanksgiving dinner?" And we did not have a good answer. We just said, "I guess the pilgrims had turkey and so here, enjoy this turkey." But it's wonderful hearing about people and their cultures and how they may be different from ours, and also, Matt, how they may be similar to ours in many ways, has been eye opening. And I feel if more people could meet some of these students and to see how much they love America and that's why they want to come and study here, I think more people would be moved by their experiences and their plight.
I think you're right, Camille. I think you're in a very divided world. Just simplifying everything and meeting and getting to know an individual seems like it could very well be not the answer, but a very solid answer to a lot of issues. The work of Ami really does zero in on that in a beautiful way. That's so wonderful and so heartwarming to hear that because I can only imagine how scary it is to go to a different country and be met with a culture clash and language barriers, etc. And to have a program like this to make visitors more welcome, it really does seem to create multiple benefits on both sides. So that's so wonderful. And I love the fact that you were a volunteer for years and now you're the executive director. That's so wonderful.
It just worked out.
Yeah. A lot of the folks that we interview in this series, sometimes they're just like, I don't know how it happened. I tripped and I was the executive director. And it's, it's to say that it wasn't necessarily part of the plan, but it's a beautiful reveal of what the plan always was. So that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing the mission of AMI. That's really great work. And one question I have to shift gears a little bit here. Speaking of missions, there's a lot of talk on this show about the balance between staying true to your mission, the reason you're doing what you're doing, and the back office administration of a nonprofit. Sometimes they do not work super congruently, but the goal is often to have one serving the other. Yeah, what with your experience as an executive director with this organization and your affiliation with prior nonprofits that you've worked with, how do you find balance between the two?
Well, it's difficult. I'll be honest with you. When I decided to, take this on. Again, thought I would just be volunteering as a board member, but you're right, it was a natural progression for someone who has believed in this organization for so many years. But the back office part of things is the most difficult part. I mean, I can go to an event and shake hands and, be a cheerleader and talk about Ami, until, I could do it all day, really. But the difficult side of things is when you are balancing the books and doing your fundraising and seeing where you may be short and making some very tough decisions. And so it is and I feel that smaller nonprofits are a bit of it at a disadvantage because some funders are looking to make a big impact and so they want to give to larger organizations where they feel they're going to have a bigger footprint. Well, there's these smaller nonprofits that need their support and funding just as much, if not more. And whereas they may not touch the same number of individuals as a large United Way or a, Boys and Girls Club, there are small nonprofits doing really exciting, wonderful work all over the United States. And those small nonprofits need support as well. So one of the biggest challenges that we face and that other nonprofits face is getting that message out there and helping other prospective funders see the value in putting their money towards organizations that may not be as big and flashy, but serve a purpose. And some of them are very narrow, like our mission may be considered a somewhat niche, very narrow focus. But goodness, it touches lives. It touches regular, ordinary Americans. It touched my family in so many ways and so many other families. And I feel like participating in programs like this allows average, ordinary, regular Americans and people to become world citizens and to play a small part in world peace. It really does. I mean, if you think about years ago, and I'm veering off of your question, but years ago we had a student that was assigned to us when I was a volunteer with AMI, and she was from Tunisia. And we're having a dinner, and we had 4 or 5 students there, and then we had some family and friends come, and we're at this long table, and I'm I'm tuning in. I'm listening to see what everyone's talking about, even though I'm in my own little conversation. And I heard Death to America. So my eyes got as big as saucers and I paused and was about to panic. And then I thought, let's just stop and listen. Let's not come, to no preconceived notions. And what I listened to her say is that she remembers hearing that in her neighborhood. And she wishes that everybody back home could see how kind Americans are, that at home they would never welcome and have complete strangers at their dinner table, enjoying conversation with people from so many different cultures. And she marveled that we do that here in our country. We welcome people. And when she went back home at the end of her studies here, I hope that she shared that same sentiment with those around her because it can change hearts and minds, not just here at home, but literally all over the world. It really is and offers the opportunity to make positive change all over the place. And that's what I'm hoping that funders and foundations and, corporations and individuals who give will understand that, and that will go a long way with helping in the back office side of things, because at the end of the day, a nonprofit, there are two things that they can't live without, and that is funding and volunteers.
Absolutely. And you answered that so beautifully, and also, gave a good example of how storytelling is the best way to demonstrate your impact on a very individualistic level. You can show stats and numbers all day long, but oftentimes donors, funders need a little more than that. Such as a conversation at a dinner table where, something that would never have happened if it weren't for this program happened. That's what it's all about. Now, you mentioned, having to make, difficult decisions, possibly, pivoting. I mean, when you're in the seat of an executive director at the helm of a nonprofit, yeah, that's part of your everyday responsibility. You've been with AMI for a couple of months now. If we kind of go back to the time you spent a couple years with rebuilding together,
I did, yes.
do you recall, you know, uh, during your time serving that nonprofit, leading that nonprofit, were there any, major pivots or just ways that you needed to get creative to help the organization maintain sustainability? Maybe if it was struggling in one area or another, utilizing your board or volunteers.
Sure. I had that happen with Rebuilding Together, where the retiring executive director at the time had health challenges, and so the board was considering shutting that affiliate altogether. And so when I came on, it was scary, but I had had a prior volunteer experience with Rebuilding Together, and I did not want to lose that for our city. And so we had to make lots of changes. And I'll tell you, even with AMI, already in the 4 months that I have been, almost 5 months now that I have been executive director, my corporate background is human resources. And so one of the first things, unfortunately, that I had to do was to do a deep dive and do some due diligence and see, where's the money going, who is doing what. And after all of that, provided my plan to the executive committee of the board, and we had to reduce our workforce. So, those are very tough decisions, and no one ever wants to have to make those decisions. And we recrafted what some of our existing staff was doing to absorb some of the work. And so the goal is to become financially sound. And then once we're financially sound, bit by bit add back on. So I would love to see us with a dedicated fund development, marketing, communications person join us. Um, our bookkeeper, our financial operations, we made some changes there as well. So you go in and it's almost like you put on your consultant hat and do your due diligence and see what needs to change. And the good thing about AMI and the good thing about Rebuilding Together when I led that nonprofit is the programming side is fabulous. I mean, what we do every day to help these students and to bring in volunteers from all over, the programmatic side functions beautifully. But it is paying for the programmatic side, therein lies the challenge. And also communicating, just as you said, you've got to communicate stories. Well, in order to communicate those stories, you've got to be able to get in front of people who are willing to hear those stories or who are willing to read, if you send it to them. That part is key. And so finding ways to creatively tell your stories in a way that people actually want to hear, that takes time and it takes effort. And one of the things I was telling Emily, our program director, is that, oftentimes you will communicate with someone 10, 15 times before you hear back. So, I just keep plugging away and hope I'm not annoying people. And if it's not an absolute no, no, go away, I'm going to come back, but I'm going to give you a little space.
Mhm.
And you've got to have a thick skin if you're working in nonprofits because you're going to get a lot of no's or a lot of not nows. But when you get those yeses and those people who say, I understand, and I believe in what you're doing. It just makes it all so much more worthwhile.
And because those that respond in that way are the ones that you want to work with anyway, that share your value and want to support your mission. So that that's very good advice because yeah, there are a lot of no's and not right nows out there. And I think it comes down to, everyone's got their own journey they're on. Everyone's busy. Everyone's a neophobe when it comes to, it's like, oh, what is this? Something new that takes me out of my comfort zone. Yeah, it sounds like persistence and asking the right question can get you there, which is great. That's very valuable to our audience. Appreciate you sharing that anecdote there. You mentioned working with a board. Obviously, every nonprofit's got one. What are some things you look for in selecting a board and just making sure that everyone is either bringing their own expertise to the table while being mission aligned and I would say there for the right reason.
Yeah, that is very important. And you don't want a board where everyone is basically the same person. So that's also has been one of my big time areas of focus with AMI is broadening our board. And what I like to tell people is diversity means a lot of different things. It does not just mean the color of a person's skin. In fact, diversity, if done correctly, means what do you do for a living? What is your age group? What part of town or the part of the country do you live in? What skills can you bring to the table? We try to make sure that we have people from all different backgrounds, and we do our checking to see, okay, here's what we've got. Do we have an attorney? Do we have someone with marketing experience? Do we have someone with fund development experience? I mean, so doing a cross analysis of your board and finding where you have gaps is the most important thing that you're going to do on the onset, because that's where you're going to see, okay, wait a minute, we need our focus to be here rather than we have enough people from this area, we need to find some other folks. And the other thing is, a board of directors should understand, if you're on a board, it is your responsibility to regenerate that board. So if it's time for you to roll off, as a board member, you really are supposed to be helping to recruit your replacement. And if it's not from your country, your company, if you work for a corporation, branch out, help nonprofits replenish themselves. And it's also the responsibility of the board to help fundraise. So I don't believe in having a development committee on the board, because the entire board should be a development committee. Now we have a working board, everyone has a role, but on top of that, there should also be a development function. Everyone needs to help with promoting the brand, promoting the organization, speaking positively and often about the organization, posting on LinkedIn, posting on, if you go to an event, tag us. I mean, help. That's why you're on a board. Help us. We can only do so much, but I'm trying to, we have a relatively new board. So a lot of the individuals on our board, or some of them, this may be the first time that they've served on a board. And so I am somewhat of a professional board member. I didn't even tell you even a third of the boards I sat on. So I mean, I could do Robert's Rules of Order in my sleep. I mean, it's just so I've seen what works and I've seen what doesn't necessarily work the best. And boards that function well are boards that believe in the mission, obviously, financially support the organization at a minimum give, and then also help fundraising in general, but repopulating the board themselves. Finding people that would be great for the board, and that also can be a challenge.
Wonderful. That's a lot of great, great things to think about when it comes to a board there. I mean, the biggest thing being, helping to regenerate itself. I mean, that's the definition of sustainability right there. And a nonprofit and its mission is oftentimes bigger than the individuals that are running it, in that it needs to exist for much longer than any one person. So, or any board. So thank you for that. Wanted to ask you as well. It sounds like AMI does thrive on volunteers as well. In what ways does the organization engage its volunteers and promote, involvement from them?
So we're blessed to have a lot of dedicated volunteers. A number of them were, parishioners or congregants at the churches that helped to found AMI early on. But we've also found volunteers from other sources as well. And it's a good group of individuals that we have. The Kiwanis clubs that are local here are really good supporters, and they come to our events and volunteer, but we could always use more volunteers. And as that original population ages, we want to make sure that we're constantly getting more and newer volunteers to join in our efforts. And some, like my oldest daughter is in a sorority in college, and they have a requirement, a service requirement. So, well, hello. Here's what you can do. You can, befriend local international students. We have a big welcome reception every year. It's our biggest event, and it's going to be on the campus of Georgia Tech. And we have about 300 people that come, about 200 students, and 100 volunteers. And those volunteers are there not just to, pass out, food, or, they're there to also help these students, who many of whom this is the first time they're meeting people outside of the academic environment. They're meeting Americans outside of the academic environment. And so talk to them, make them feel welcome. It's scary. I mean, I talk to people all the time and I say, imagine truly. I mean, I know that we have study abroad, but when you just study abroad, you're typically going with a group. You're going with a representative from your university and you're going with other students from your university. This is very different. These are singular students who have left their homes, left their friends, left their school to come here and study by themselves, many of whom don't know anyone, don't know a soul. There was a gentleman from Nigeria. He didn't even have a debit card or a credit card. How are you going to get around in Atlanta? You need a car or a MARTA. And so just being people who can guide them and be a smiling face. It's so we can't do what we do without those wonderful volunteers.
Mhm.
And I feel like as a former volunteer, and I still volunteer. I had a welcome dinner at my house. I'm not getting paid for it. I'm doing the food myself because I still want to have that experience and to be able to have that effect and impact and to be of service to others. And I truly believe that our volunteers, our American volunteers, get so much out of these interactions with these students. I don't know. I like I said, we have the word ministry in our name, and we're not a religious organization anymore. But there is a spiritual component to welcoming the stranger. And so I think a lot of people can see the similarities in any religion to our responsibility to be kind and to show hospitality for others.
Absolutely. I think there is something to that where it's not just religion that can subscribe to the idea that one of the best things you can do is to know and be known. That's a universal truth. So I think yeah, I think the way that you utilize the word ministry doesn't have to be confined to religious entities. And I appreciate your response to that question as well. It sounds like there is so much to be gained from volunteering from your organization, and you already have so many dedicated volunteers that can bring in new folks when needed, and are there to donate their time and efforts. But it sounds like it's a relatively easy sell because it's so like what a unique opportunity to volunteer for an event like that, and you know I don't think of too many other opportunities to get to interact with folks from other countries in such a unique way and all in one spot. So that really is wonderful. Camille, I wanted to ask you what is the best way for our listeners to support the work of AMI and where can we find more information about the organization?
Thank you for that. Absolutely. Because we could always use more support, financial and volunteers. So our website is amiatlanta.org. And so AMI is AMIS Atlanta.org. And so there's all sorts of information on there about our welcome reception in September, about our Amigo program, which means friend in Spanish. And that's our one on one where we partner an American volunteer with one student, and they come to your house for dinner, or you meet them in a restaurant and, go to an event together, just kind of be their friend while they're here. We do, my favorite is Thanksgiving with Ami. And so you can have Thanksgiving students at your house for Thanksgiving. And you can even tell us, okay, I'll take two students, because I have three girls. And so I'm not trying to have a bunch of, men, so I would say I prefer them to not be all guys, different countries of origin would be nice. And so we try to, meet people and with their goals and what their desires are for the program. We do a criminal background check. Just you don't We don't require social security numbers, but we do background checks just to make sure that when we're sending these students into a home that, the home is a safe place for folks to be. But that's really the only hoop that anyone would have to jump through for volunteering. And all of that information is on our website, as well as how someone can financially support the organization. Because I will say this, and as you know, Matt, in order for an organization to exist, there are staff members that put on these programs. So our costs are not just the cost of the welcome reception, for example. The cost is also the salaries of the employees that are organizing the event, as well as the event costs themselves. And I try to, whenever I get to go on speaking engagements, I try to help people understand that you have to look at this from a wholesale perspective. The costs that go into an event planning or program planning has to include salaries. It has to include all of those other back end costs. So we definitely would be so grateful for financial support. And I also want to say this: AMI's motto is an old Sanskrit saying, and it says, walk together, talk together, all you nations of the world, because only then shall you have peace. And that gives me goosebumps. It
Me
just
too.
I know, I love it, and it truly speaks to who we are, what we're all about, and how grateful we are for each and every person that chooses to support us with their dollars, their money, or their time, because they really are helping us to live our vision and our mission.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. Yes, Camille, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
insights and the great work that you're doing. And yeah, it was just a delight to chat with you and learn about your experience. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate it. I'm grateful.